What happens when a member of the royal family and treat a beloved host like their personal servant? In just 43 seconds, Prince Harry would go from charming guest to absolute nightmare, unleashing a verbal attack so shocking that it would leave Lorraine Kelly speechless and viewers across Britain reaching for their remotes in disbelief. The morning started like any other on The Lorraine Show. The studio buzzed with its usual energy as crew members adjusted cameras and checked sound levels. Lorraine Kelly sat behind her iconic desk, reviewing her notes one final time before going live. She had conducted thousands of interviews over her decades-long career, but today felt different. Today, she would be sitting across from Prince Harry, and what should have been a routine promotional chat was about to become the most explosive television moment of her entire career. "Good morning, and welcome to Lorraine." She began with her trademark warm smile, her Scottish accent immediately putting viewers at ease across the nation. "I am absolutely delighted to be joined this morning by Prince Harry, who is here to discuss his latest charitable endeavors and his new life. Harry, thank you so much for being with us today." Prince Harry shifted in his chair, his posture already suggesting something was amiss. Gone was the easygoing demeanor the public had grown accustomed to seeing. Instead, there was a tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his eyes that Lorraine, with her years of experience reading guests, immediately picked up on. "Thank you for having me, Lorraine," he replied, though his tone lacked the warmth typically expected from such an exchange. "Though I have to say, I was expecting a bit more from this setup." The green room was rather disappointing. Lorraine blinked, caught slightly off guard by the unexpected criticism. In all her years of hosting, she had rarely encountered a guest who opened with complaints about the facilities. But ever the professional, she maintained her composure and pressed forward with a gentle laugh. "Well, I do apologize if our accommodations weren't quite up to your usual standards," she said, her voice still carrying its characteristic warmth despite the odd beginning. "But I am sure our viewers are much more interested in hearing about the wonderful work you have been doing with your various charitable projects. Can you tell us about some of the initiatives you have been focusing on recently?" Harry's response was immediate and sharp, cutting through the studio air like a blade. "Actually, Lorraine, I think we need to address something first. I was told this interview would be conducted with proper respect for my position and status. Yet here I am, sitting in what feels like a budget afternoon talk show setup." The words hit Lorraine like a physical blow. In 40 years of broadcasting, she had never been spoken to with such blatant disrespect on her own show. The crew behind the cameras exchanged shocked glances, and even the usually steady camera operators seemed to falter for a moment. "I beg your pardon?" Lorraine managed, her professional mask slipping just slightly to reveal genuine confusion and hurt beneath. "Harry, I am not quite sure what you mean. We have always prided ourselves on providing a welcoming environment for all our guests, and this is the same studio setup we use for everyone, from Hollywood stars to world leaders." But Harry was not finished. His voice rose slightly, taking on an edge that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. "That is exactly the problem, Lorraine. I should not be treated like everyone else. I am a member of the British royal family, whether I am working or not. There should be certain standards, certain protocols followed. The fact that I had to walk through the same entrance as your regular guests, sit in the same green room, use the same facilities, it is frankly insulting." The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Lorraine, who had built her career on making guests feel comfortable and audiences feel at home, found herself in completely uncharted territory. Her decades of experience had taught her to handle difficult guests with grace, but nothing had prepared her for this level of entitlement from someone who had once been beloved by the British public. "Harry," she said carefully, her voice steady despite the shock she was clearly feeling, "I want to make sure I understand what you are saying. Are you suggesting that you require special treatment because of your birth? Because from where I sit, everyone who comes on this show is treated with equal respect and dignity, regardless of their background or status." The question seemed to ignite something in Harry. His face flushed slightly, and his hands, which had been resting calmly on the armrests of his chair, began to gesture more animatedly. "Equal treatment? Lorraine, do you have any idea who you are talking to? I have spent my entire life in service to this country. I have served in the military. I have supported countless charitable causes. I have given everything to the British people. And yet here I am, being treated like some minor celebrity promoting their latest project." Lorraine felt her own composure beginning to fray at the edges, but her professionalism held firm. "With respect, Harry, every guest on this show has their own accomplishments and their own story to tell. We have had war veterans, charity workers, doctors who have saved countless lives, teachers who have changed communities, Each person who sits in that chair has contributed something valuable to society. Your contributions are certainly significant, but they do not entitle you to diminish the value of others or to speak to me with such disrespect in my own studio." The prince's response was swift and cutting. "Your studio? Lorraine, let me remind you of something. Without people like me, without the royal family, without the stories and the access we provide, shows like yours would not exist. You have built your career on the backs of people like me, interviewing us, discussing our lives, profiting from our stories. The least you could do is show some gratitude instead of lecturing me about respect." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Lorraine had been in broadcasting long enough to know when a line had been crossed, and this was it. Her eyes, which had remained kind and patient throughout the exchange, now showed a flash of steel that longtime viewers would recognize as her limit being reached. "I need to stop you right there," she said, her voice taking on a firmness that commanded attention. "In 30 years of doing this job, I have never, and I mean never, built my career on anyone's back. I have worked every single day to earn the trust of viewers by conducting fair, honest interviews and by treating every single guest with the same level of professionalism and courtesy. If you believe that showing you basic human decency and expecting the same in return is somehow beneath your station, then perhaps you have forgotten what true service actually means." The words seemed to strike Harry like a physical blow, but instead of backing down, they only served to fuel his anger further. His face darkened, and for a moment, the carefully constructed public persona that he had maintained for years completely crumbled away, revealing something ugly underneath. "How dare you?" he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than if he had shouted. "How dare you sit there and lecture me about service? You have no idea what I have sacrificed, what I have given up. You read from a teleprompter and ask softball questions to celebrities, and you think that gives you the right to judge me?" Lorraine felt every eye in the studio upon her. The crew, the producers, everyone was watching to see how she would handle this unprecedented situation. In her decades of broadcasting, she had faced down politicians trying to dodge questions, celebrities throwing tantrums, and even the occasional drunk guest, but nothing quite like this raw display of entitled fury from someone who should have known better. "Harry," she said, her voice remaining remarkably steady despite the tension crackling through the air, "I am not judging your service or your sacrifices. What I am addressing is the way you are choosing to conduct yourself right here, right now, in this moment. You came onto my show, and instead of engaging in the conversation we had planned, you have spent the entire time complaining about everything from the green room to the way you have been treated, despite the fact that you have been shown nothing but courtesy since you arrived." But Harry was beyond reason now, his royal training seemingly abandoned entirely. He leaned forward in his chair, pointing a finger directly at Lorraine in a gesture that would have been considered shocking from anyone, let alone a member of the royal family. "Courtesy?" he spat. "You call this courtesy? I should have been greeted personally by you when I arrived. There should have been proper security arrangements made. The car that picked me up was not even a proper luxury vehicle. Do you understand that I am taking time out of my incredibly busy schedule to appear on your little morning show? And this is how I am repaid?" The studio audience, which had been murmuring quietly among themselves, fell into complete silence. Even the most seasoned crew members, who had seen their share of dramatic moments over the years, stood frozen in disbelief. This was not the Prince Harry they thought they knew. This was not the man who had charmed the world with his military service and charitable work. Lorraine took a deep breath, and in that moment, she made a decision that would define not just this interview, but her entire legacy as a broadcaster. She was not going to back down, not going to coddle this behavior, not going to pretend that being born into royalty excused treating people with contempt. "Let me be very clear about something," she said, her Scottish accent becoming more pronounced as her emotions began to surface. "You are absolutely right that you took time out of your schedule to be here. And I took time out of my schedule to prepare for this interview, to research your projects, to think of thoughtful questions that would allow you to share your message with our viewers. My team took time to prepare the studio, to arrange the lighting, to make sure everything was perfect for your appearance." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing with devastating calm. "But here's what you seem to have forgotten, Harry. None of us owe you anything beyond basic human decency and professional courtesy, both of which you have received in abundance. Your title does not give you the right to treat people as if they exist solely for your convenience. Your birth does not make you inherently more valuable than anyone else who walks through that door." Harry's face was now flushed red with anger, and his hands were actually shaking as he gripped the arms of his chair. You have absolutely no idea what you are talking about. You sit here in your comfortable little studio, with your comfortable little life, asking your comfortable little questions, and you think that makes you qualified to understand what it means to carry the weight of royal responsibility? Royal responsibility? Lorraine repeated, and for the first time, there was a note of incredulity in her voice. Is that what you call this behavior? Is this how you fulfill your royal responsibility? By coming onto a television show and insulting the host, complaining about every single thing, and acting as if the world owes you special treatment simply because of who your grandmother was? The mention of the late queen seemed to hit a nerve that even Harry's anger could not completely override. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, perhaps a recognition of how far he had fallen from the standard she had set. But if there was any shame there, it was quickly buried under another wave of indignation. "Do not," he said, his voice now rising to a level that everyone in the studio could clearly hear, "do not presume to bring my family into this. You know nothing about the pressures, the expectations, the constant scrutiny that comes with being born into the royal family. Every single day of my life has been lived under a microscope, every decision analyzed, every mistake magnified, and now you sit there, someone who has never had to deal with anything more challenging than a difficult guest, and you dare to judge how I handle that pressure?" Lorraine had heard enough. The professional mask that she had maintained throughout her career, the diplomatic approach that had served her so well in thousands of interviews, finally fell away completely. What emerged was not the polished television presenter, but the working-class Scottish woman who had fought her way to the top of British broadcasting through sheer determination and integrity. You want to talk about pressure, Harry? Let me tell you about pressure. Pressure is working your way up from local radio to national television with nothing but talent and hard work to rely on. Pressure is conducting live interviews, knowing that millions of people are watching and judging your every word. Pressure is dealing with guests who think that their status gives them the right to treat you like dirt, while still maintaining your professionalism and doing your job. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving his face. But you know what the biggest pressure is? The pressure to maintain your integrity when someone is trying to bully you into accepting behavior that you know is wrong. And that is exactly what you are trying to do right now. Harry was on his feet before she had finished speaking, his chair rolling backward from the force of his movement. "That is it," he declared, his voice echoing through the studio. "I am not going to sit here and be lectured by some morning television host who thinks she knows better than me. This interview is over." But Lorraine was not about to let him have the last word. She remained seated, her posture straight and dignified, looking up at the prince who was now towering over her in what could only be described as an intimidating stance. "Sit down, Harry," she said quietly, but with such authority that even he seemed momentarily taken aback. "You wanted to come on this show, you agreed to this interview, and you are going to finish it like an adult. Running away when someone challenges your behavior is not very royal, is it?" The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Harry stared at her for a long moment, his chest rising and falling with barely controlled rage. The studio was so quiet that the hum of the cameras seemed deafeningly loud. "You think you can order me around?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can speak to me like I am some common guest who has to follow your rules? I am Prince Harry of Wales. I have met presidents, prime ministers, world leaders. I have dined with heads of state and been received by royalty across the globe. And you, a daytime television presenter from Scotland, think you can tell me what to do?" The words were like a slap across the face to everyone in the studio, but Lorraine did not flinch. If anything, she seemed to grow more composed as Harry became more unhinged. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I can tell you what to do, because this is my studio, this is my show, and you are my guest. And as my guest, you will show basic respect or you will leave. Those are your choices, Harry. There is no third option where you get to stay and continue behaving like a spoiled child." Harry's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. In his entire life, no one had ever spoken to him with such direct, unflinching honesty. Palace courtiers had always been deferential. Military officers had shown proper respect for his rank, and even his harshest critics in the press had maintained some level of formal courtesy. But here was Lorraine Kelly, sitting calmly in her chair, looking at him as if he were nothing more than an unruly teenager having a tantrum. "You have no idea who you are dealing with," he finally managed to say, his voice now taking on a threatening tone that made several crew members step back instinctively. "I could destroy your career with a single phone call. I could make sure you never work in television again. Do you understand that? Do you understand the kind of power and influence I still have?" The threat landed in the studio like a bomb, and for a moment, everyone held their breath. This was it, the moment that would define everything. Would Lorraine back down in the face of such a blatant attempt at intimidation? Would she apologize and try to smooth things over to save her career? Instead, she did something that no one, least of all Harry, expected. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh or a forced chuckle, but a genuine, hearty laugh that seemed to come from deep in her belly. "Oh, Harry," she said, wiping a tear from her eye, "you really have no idea how this works, do you? You think television careers are built on the approval of people like you? You think my viewers tune in every morning because they hope to see me bowing and scraping to entitled guests?" She stood up now, matching his height and looking him directly in the eye. "Let me explain something to you about power. Real power. Real power is not inherited. It is not given to you because of who your parents were. Real power is earned through respect, through treating people with dignity, through building relationships based on mutual trust and understanding." Harry tried to interrupt, but Lorraine held up a hand that somehow commanded silence more effectively than any royal gesture ever could. "You want to know what real power looks like?" she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Real power is sitting in that chair every morning and connecting with ordinary people who are facing extraordinary challenges. Real power is giving a voice to those who usually go unheard. Real power is building a career based on integrity and authenticity, not on accidents of birth." She moved closer to him, and despite the fact that he had several inches of height on her, he actually seemed to shrink back slightly. "And you know what the most powerful thing of all is, Harry? The power to look someone in the eye, someone who is trying to bully and intimidate you, and tell them exactly what you think of their behavior without fear or hesitation." Harry's face had gone through several color changes during her speech, finally settling on a pale white that made his earlier flush seem mild by comparison. When he spoke, his voice was shaking with barely controlled fury. "How dare you speak to me this way? How dare you stand there and lecture me about power and respect when you are nothing more than a provincial television presenter who got lucky? You will regret this, Lorraine. I promise you, you will regret every word you have just said." But Lorraine was not finished. She had spent 30 years in broadcasting, 30 years of being professional and diplomatic, and measured in her responses. Today, all of that was going out the window, and it felt absolutely liberating. "The only thing I regret," she said, her voice carrying the weight of decades of experience and wisdom, "is that it took this long for someone to tell you the truth about yourself. You came in here expecting to be treated like royalty, but you have behaved like anything but. You have been rude, entitled, demanding, and thoroughly unpleasant. You have insulted me, my staff, and this show. And now you are threatening me because I had the audacity to expect you to act like a decent human being." She walked over to her desk and pressed a button that every guest dreaded hearing. It was the signal to security, but more than that, it was the sound of a television career potentially ending in real time. "Security will escort you out now," she said with devastating calm. "This interview is over, not because you declared it to be, but because I am ending it. You are no longer welcome on this show. And frankly, after this display, I suspect you will not be welcome on many others either." Harry stood there for a moment, looking around the studio as if he could not quite believe what was happening. The crew members avoided his gaze, the cameras kept rolling, and Lorraine stood by her desk with the quiet dignity of someone who had just taken a stand for everything she believed in. When security arrived, Harry did not resist, but as he was being led toward the exit, he turned back one final time with a look of pure venom. "This is not over, Lorraine," he called out, his voice echoing through the studio. "You have no idea what you have just done." Lorraine watched him go, then turned back to the camera with the poise of a true professional. "Well," she said to the viewers at home, her warm smile returning as if nothing had happened, "that certainly was not what we had planned for this morning, but sometimes these things happen in live television." We will be right back after this break with a lovely segment about community gardens in Yorkshire. And with that, she sat back down at her desk, straightened her papers, and prepared to continue with her show as if she had not just made television history.